Hello world, Frida Reba Darcy and one Patricia O'Connor here, and it is our Friday drop. And I'm just kind of taking in the flowers. We've got our little blue flowers and our little yellow, kind of a Van Gogh yellow flowers there. This is our balcony, and this is just we've got a couple of little things lined up in show and tell. That's kind of what Friday means to me, I guess. It's like it's show and tell day or something. But this is the Dawn Redwood after we took all that stuff that was growing straight up and flattened it out with wire so that it at least is facing the right way. And we made an apex out of that top branch there. Got a little light wire around it, and it seems to be doing okay. So that's what's going on there. It does look a little bit more tree-like. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily any happier with the thickness of those branches, but at least now we can kind of see what's going on a little bit, and we can kind of see where the source of our sprouts and growth is coming from. It's nice to see new stuff coming out. And I cleaned up the top a little bit off camera. That I think it needed that too. But that's got us a new selected leader, and I put a little wire on it and sent it straight up. What else have I got? Oh, this. Those plastic tubs are still back there. They're a little shoved out of the way. That is that's a pretty good little supply of perlite, which is going to be our major ingredient when we do our little cutting project, which is coming up. With those plastic bins that you almost can't see it, but they've been kind of shoved back out of the way to make room. I had to be careful how I took that big bag and set it in there amongst the trees. But the trees are looking nice. Today is rather warm. It is, it's pretty warm. And swap hands there so I can free up my left hand. It's pretty warm out, and like it says we're in the high 70s, which feels pretty warm. It's as cool as it has been. This is a little quick look at the new leader on the ball cypress. It's growing out nicely. As you can see, a couple of shows ago I did a chop back, allowing for this guy to take its role. It won't be growing in the shadow of that other branch, and a lot of other stuff out in here won't be growing in the shadow of that other branch. By allowing this sucker branch to get as fat as it wanted, it was also allowed to take up an enormous amount of prime real estate when it came to where all the light was. And so I was kind of, well, it's kind of a diminishing return at this point if everything else is kind of growing in the wrong branches shadows. So pruning that back seemed to be the way to go. And I'd kind of alluded that I might very well be cutting this back in stages, but between now and next spring, this will be gone in favor of that. From here on out, that'll be this side's leader, and that will be that side's leader. Having got like a 1 or so year head start, that one will always be a little thicker, which I think is cool, than the one on the front side. Even though the tree is a little turned to us, so the front profile would always show them, would always kind of, I guess, more like the other way. But anyway, I think it's better that this is the thinner side, so that it'll be this won't be flagging off that from view, in other words. So I think that's kind of coming out okay. And that's what's going on there. A quick look at the Japanese black pine. I think we're at the point now where the green of the needles is starting to be the more dominant color of the overall palette. You see there, if you focus in kind of on the tree, you see that the green sprouts are all over the tree and they're healthy and strong looking. But if you just kind of look at the overall color, it's still, the color is a little tainted by all the older yellow needles that are still there. But as the healthy stuff comes out, it's makes for a more pleasing appearance to this guy, and I'm glad to see the way this tree has been progressing. It's been doing what I hoped, which was recover. Our other little Japanese black pine is doing very well and is just actually growing pretty fast. That's a quick look at our oak. I believe our coastal oak, and it's doing really good. I just watered about an hour or so ago, so everything is currently hydrated and looking good. The reason I'm just kind of doing this little quick glance is it's just it's kind of reassuring to see how well everything is responding. This is the cork bark oak that I just brought in the last show and did a little bit of prune back. You can see an overall of it. I'm looking at some of the stuff that I left a little long to allow for dieback or whatever, and I'm going, yeah, I probably don't really need stuff like that, but you know, and I'm looking at how many I have right here in this spot and going, yeah, that is a little too cluttered. Some of that probably could have been cleared out, whereas I just cut it back. But overall, it's like stuff like this. I was saying how earlier I couldn't even see in there. Now I can, and I can actually see that I need to reduce that by about half, or that's going to turn into a club. So things are going really well. We've got material. In other words, I guess we've got material to burn, for lack of a better term, with more material on the way. So as we pay our talent here on the show. So that's kind of what's been going on with, let's see, the Dawn Redwood that we just worked on, and the cork bark oak that we just worked on. I'm gonna grab up my my favorite scissors. So that brings me to this guy. Look, this is my Trident maple, and I'm just gonna do a little quick recap of what I've been talking about this tree whenever I have been talking about this tree. This was one of my earlier bonsais, and I really love it. There's quite a bit to love about this tree, but in a maple sense, the more I learned about maples, the more I learned that it wasn't without its issues. Basically, if you go through and just cut everything to an outside shape, the tree was very pleasing. You have this thick trunk, and it's in a slanting style. But on the other hand, when you really look at what you have, there's 3 trunks there, and I'm just not really a huge fan of that. Plus, those little trunks have been cut back, that once everything dies back in the winter, you're looking at that, and those have probably maybe started a year or two before the tree and I met. So my idea is to give that a chop right in there and let this little part that's coming out, whenever that gets as big as what I just cut, that would change the shape of the tree for sure. Then that still leaves 2 more. The one on the back side, I would do the same, and the one on the front of this little 3-piece trio, I would chop and then drill straight down and make a hollow feature running down to probably this little fork right here. So being a maple, that means that it would probably, if I tried to do something like that now, it would stain the tree up an awful lot. But I'd like to make the main body of the I'd like to bring everything on that tree down a little bit. And I would like to start making ramification over from scratch. Whenever I got the tree, it was very pleasing to look at because it had been cut in a shape like that. But whenever the winter came, At first, one thing I noticed is I didn't get fantastic colors, although last year I did. I gotta say the tree must have been something with the sugars or something, but it was really stunning. But what I had learned is that it had just been kind of cut continually in some little bowl shape, just kind of doing this, but not a lot of attention was made to how it got that way. So that when winter came along and all the you see the changing of the seasons, it was really pretty at first whenever you see all those colors, but then when the leaves began to fall, we began to see how the structure of the tree was really made, and it wasn't as pleasing as some of the really nice work that I've seen before. So that was when I decided to just cut the tree back to a starting point and start over. And it was about the time that I cut it back to this lower height, so I could start seeing what was going on and maybe start adding light in here to the beginning. I mean, more to the middle, and that would also help things bifurcate off and branch off, and we're going to start learning more about maples, yada yada. It was about that time that once I looked at it, I realized that if I started over, I was starting over with trunks that the foundation work wasn't something that I was really that happy about. And that's where the idea came to chop that back trunk where that branch is, chop the other back trunk where there is a branch like that I didn't show you because I'd have to drag the camera around there, and then lose that other one. But that, to me, to my way of thinking, would not be a 1 year process. I would wait until this winter, or maybe repot this winter and wait till next winter. I'm not really sure. I'll have to figure that out. And then I will take one of those trunks, and then I will wait till the following year, and then I'll take the other trunk, and then wait till the following year, and then hollow out the part that we don't want. But in the meantime, the tree will have lived off of those other pieces of the tree. And then once I hollow out the outside trunk, it will have already had 2 years of growth on the back trunk, so that it's, I won't be cutting its feet just completely out from under it. And that's the basic idea. So to that end, this year I started feeding it, and after I cut it back to, we're going to call this our base length, then this year it responded with the feeding. Well, it was going to grow these anyway, but they're extra long and they're extra thick because of the feeding. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go below the line where these start, below the line, and cut them back. I'm gonna let that have, I might need heavier cutters for this too. But that's the idea. I'm gonna just take every one of those. In fact, I'm gonna bail out right now, and well, that's handy. I'll go with these guys. This knob cutter should probably do a nice job on that. And I'm going to cut them all below the canopy line, because whereas they had been robbing a lot of light before, we're going to open all of that up to the canopy now. And we're not taking it all, but I'm going to open up a lot of that light to what I kind of call the canopy line, the original line that we had cut back into. Also, this thing is getting so overgrown that it is into the back wall, and it is just really being a hog. It's hogging my bench, and that's just so unnecessary. So this is going to give me some room that I didn't really want to give up to this tree on my bench. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I'd also talked about future projects. I see the need for increasing the area that I have to put this tree. The area that it's in now is not, even though I'm getting, I've got some sunlight in front of me, or it has some sunlight in front of it, but it has the two grow lights behind it. So this year it's getting more, I think, evenly lit all the way around the tree. So I haven't felt the need to rotate it. You can kind of see what I'm doing now. I haven't felt the need to rotate the tree like I had in years past because of what these guys are doing. These are two 740 watt apiece full spectrum LEDs, and I think they also kind of enhance the appearance. I especially like the looks of them just before they go off. When we're at twilight or dusk, whatever, and they kind of outshine the daylight just a little bit. The color of the tree is very pleasing. I've seen some LEDs do, there's people that do different spectrums. The purple light seem to be the way to go for a lot of it. And to that end, I think you can see that I've got some diodes that produce a color like that in my full spectrum light that we're under right now, right? But that color is being overpowered by the rest of the rack. I don't know how well that's going to read. It might not read the same. The few times before that I flashed the camera by accident, I did happen to notice that it wasn't too vulgar, so I didn't mind showing y'all that. I don't think I'm doing anything that'll hurt anybody, but let me know if you find me flashing that light like that in any way offensive. I had a customer the other day at the hardware store tell me that they could not handle LEDs, and I didn't really feel comfortable going into it with them. I just kind of gave them the look and nod. But it was my thinking that they sort of meant in the same way that you might not like things that strobe, like in an epileptic seizure sort of instance. And I had never ever heard that. Well, it's not like they've been around forever, but in the 4 or 5 years that I've been around LEDs, I had never heard of anybody having a reaction to them other than my own reaction. When they first came out, I was not the biggest LED fan. I knew what metal halide lights could produce, and one thing they produced was a lot of heat, and another thing they produced was a high use of energy. They were not necessarily green, and that's kind of what we're doing there. Everything that was longer than that was this. This is our Carnage cam on the that's our Carnage cam for the Trident Maple. Now what we have here is what I suppose would be a Summer Dew. Yeah, it's got a bob. It feels a lot more comfortable now, and it can go out and do things without feeling like it's all hot and weighted down. So yeah, I'm just kidding, but it's no longer hogging the balcony. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I do have a project in mind where I am going to make this wider. I haven't worked it all out in my head yet, but part of the reason is that just absolutely increases the amount of space I have to set trees down. I've got all of this area in here where trees could be, and that just depends on the table or the bench widening, whatever I decide to do there. But I see that guy for one, and this guy in the future, it's going to expand in its space when it actually gets proportional. The oak will be a little bit wider than it is now when it's fully ramified. I didn't want to grow stuff out to that length and then let that vibricate out. I wanted to start cutting everything back before then and let it vibricate out to the right length. So at some point, that'll be too close to the pine. That'll be too close to everything, because that canopy will probably be a third or a half again bigger, and it'll need room to grow without growing next to the wall the way it is now. We have the light end of this covered, I feel like, so just a little bit more space to set things without them crowding other things, and we should be a go. But there's still a little bit of room to spare here too, just not a lot of it. And when everything gets full out in midsummer, then the spaces get a little tighter. Right now everybody is still maybe a little cut back short. Just this young in the year, except for what I just did there. But that will be a little bigger, and that's got its needles just coming out, but it's kind of in its own space. I could also rotate that whole ponderosa pine around facing me, and instead of having its back to us. This whole time that you've gotten to know my ponderosa pine, we've mostly seen it. I think we've mostly seen it with its back to us, because it actually is something that it is part of its niche where it survives, is south-facing outcroppings of rocks or overhanging cliffs, or south-facing. And that's just kind of why that's there. But that's got us with that. That's kind of what I had intended to do. I've been watching that tree get a little long and lanky for the past couple of weeks while I took ill. Next to go on the axe, in fact, it's just kind of a 5-minute job probably, is this guy. It would be maybe nice to enjoy the lush color and let that viney stuff go out, but we do have a little bit of growth down here. This stuff needs to stay active. When I bought the tree, this limb, I believe, had probably died the year before because it had buds on it. But it's been a deadwood feature since I got it. And I think that's an example of what I was kind of saying earlier. If you've got a lot of stuff growing up high, a wisteria is going to try at the end of the day to be what it is. And that's a really big tree or a vine. So when it starts happening more up here than it is down here, then the down here starts to die off. That might be an example of that, because that part was dead, and it had probably been allowed to run. So if I want to keep all of this last year's stuff, I should probably start thinking about how much of this we're gonna keep. I see a couple of quick hacks here, but you know what? If I put that off, I'll end up doing it without you. So let's just grab what I should have grabbed earlier as cutters and go back in. I guess I can go in. Yeah, I'll go in with some hybrids. So I got some hybrid cutters here, and I'm just going to take off a few of these. This guy here, this branch on top, it is already thicker. It is already thicker than the base it came out of. Kind of just resting the cutters there. Here I go. So yeah, that was definitely, I definitely needed something a little heavier to make that cut. And I'll clean that up that much. Now I've got another one of those over here. First of all, let's see if I can take that way without totally tearing it up. Done. Now, the thing about hybrid cutters is with that rounded edge, you kind of get more of an option, and you get to pick the angle better. You see how nice that cut was? I took a little extra time and found the place on the hybrid cutter that more matched what was happening there, and I just made that cut really clean. Okay, more Carnage Cam. Now then, that is that. I've got a little bit of, I don't know what I've got. I'm looking at something. Was that a spider web, or was that a dust bunny? I don't know. Aphid, dust bunny. It felt very light. It didn't feel insect like, but I also saw little spots on the leaves, and I couldn't tell if those were spots that I had made with other spray bottles, or whether or not those were spots made. So it's not a bad time. This is neem. I buy it in concentrate, and then I mix it with like a teaspoon or so. I don't really use a teaspoon. I blip it, and then I use a empty Febreze bottle as a sprayer. Even though I still have, well, the reason is I don't want to use my other sprayers for that. I don't want to put chemicals in my other sprayers. So if I'm walking along and I see something that has gone unnoticed and is way too dry, and I see a spray bottle there, I don't want to grab it up and then discover that it's got neem in it, or alcohol in it, or something weird in it. The water bottles, or the spray bottles, just have water in them, so that if I grab one for water, I won't be surprising myself. Whereas this was an old fabric softener bottle, and you would never think to spray fabric softener on your plants. I'm only going to grab this as a bottle if I know that I've already changed what's in it. Kind of keeps me from pouring something vile on my plants. That is that, and here's a little quick look at our cypress trees. Manana will be Super Cypress Saturday. I don't think I really have anything in mind on the books then, but that's what we have. That's what we have to look forward to. Our next drop will be Saturday, but that is another quick look at our, as promised, when we start doing our episode with our cuttings, I will be taking those very large containers that you can kind of see one of down there in the bottom. There's two of them, and I'm going to use one of them as a lid, and then I'm going to put several inches of vermiculite and probably some sand in the bottom, just for water retention, and then throw some water to that, and then divide that up into thirds, that bin up into thirds, and put maybe 60 little toothpick dots in it, and divide it up into 20 of these, 20 of these, and 20 of these, and it'll be the trees that are around, and it'll be little propagated cuttings from some of the trees that we have around here. So that was the last of sand. I don't think I want to go with any of our local sand. It's all going to have this was a shipyard for the Navy, so even though I'm next to a beach, I would probably not trust that sand. And I wouldn't think sifting it would help. It might have a high lead content, so every time you sift it, you would just keep the lead. I don't know that. I do know that the town that I came from was a lot like Alameda, and that was one of the hazards. There are beaches were all sand that had primarily at one point or another been used to sandblast ships, so it had a lot of lead from paint in it. Anyway, more than you ever wanted to know about sand and sand in the ground near shipyards. But for that reason, I'll probably be going with some play sand from the store. So, but that's not really a high dollar thing. We've got most of our ingredients together. I'm just gotta put it together when I'm going to. I need to take all of those cuttings at about the same time because I can't leave them just hanging around waiting for me to do the other ones, and make sure that all the same people that I okayed this with a couple of weeks ago are still the same people that are around now. So make sure we're on our P's and Q's and our little dots are crossed and what have you. But that's what's coming up as a next project. And I also see a little shelf growth, but I also see this summer we may grow by a few trees. I'm starting to wonder as to whether next month our club is having an auction, and I'm thinking that's going to be pretty exciting. I don't think I'm going to put any trees in the auction, but I may be wanting to go check that auction out and see if I can be a player for some of that. I'm kind of trying to get my ducks in a row for that, and all signs point to yes so far. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching. This has been a quite warm but beautiful Friday. I did cut back that Trident maple as promised. I've got one or two more sprigs I need to do a big reach around the balcony kind of thing to do, but I'll get to that. Also, that tree could probably use a little cleanup. Maybe I could rake and do some get rid of some of the not moss, but some of the grass and weeds in there, and do a little rake on the top and do a little redress. It's evidently gone through a lot of root growth this year, probably because of the feedings, and so yeah, I could probably clean that up some. It's now at a height where I could bring it in. As you can see, I've kind of been working on my little area there. I've actually got a nice little, for me, a nice little display work area, close to dog, close to resource material, and it could be taller. I might have to set my overhead light on some sort of box or something to raise it up a little bit to make room for the taller trees. But I do believe that maple would make it underneath there now. It wouldn't have before, and I had to back the light way off because of that oak, for instance, didn't have enough headroom in there. But that's how that came out. I think the oak's looking really nice. Anyway, like and subscribe if you have not already. Our next drop will be our Super Cypress Saturday drop, and I don't have any big tales on what that's going to be about yet, but I'm sure it'll be fun. And I hope that you are having yourself one fantastic Friday. I appreciate you, and Frida appreciates you, and thank you so much for watching.